Hospitality is one of the most popular industry for international students to work in Australia. And with more than 900,000 people working in hospitality industry in Australia, with an average age of only 25 years of age, it certainly tells you that a lot of young people work in this industry. And if you are an international student who's planning to work in Australia in hospitality industry, this is the video you need to watch, as we will cover lots of details about working in hospitality industry in Australia. Specifically speaking, we'll talk about some of the requirements, how to find jobs, and some key agencies and apps you need to know about when you're applying or looking for jobs in hospitality. A quick background about myself as well, that I have actually worked in hospitality industry. One of the first jobs that I did here in Australia was in kitchen, working as a dishwasher. Not one of the best jobs out there, but it certainly was a great starting point to start off paying some of my bills, and it helped me to understand a bit of Australian workplace culture as well. So I would consider it pretty decent experience. Now let's get into the video itself. First thing first, we'll talk about benefits of working in hospitality industry. There are a few benefits. One of the first one is it's quite easy to get a job in this industry. Comparing to many other industries, finding a job in hospitality is usually quite easy. And we'll talk about how to find a job in the industry in the next sections. The other benefit is that you do not need to have a lot of work experience. Even if you don't have any experience at all, sometimes you can still find a job in the industry, maybe in the back of house instead of the front. And that brings me to the next point, which is communication skills. If you are someone who's going to work in the back of house, then you do not need to have an amazing communication skills. You can even get away with the basic communication skills. And that's another benefit of finding a job in this industry. The next one is decent wages. Now in Australia, usually people working in hospitality don't get a lot of tips, because the wage rates here are quite decent. The minimum pay rate here in Australia at the moment is $23.23 per hour. On an average in hospitality industry, depending upon your job role, you could be making anywhere from $25 to $30 per hour. Again, there are a few factors involved, including the time of the day, your age, and so on. But that's an average pay rate to give you a perspective. And last but not the least is networking. In my personal opinion, hospitality is a great way to meet new people and also to build your network here in Australia. You will meet some amazing people as a customer, as a co-workers, or even as a managers, and you may end up having a lifelong relationships with them. So those were some of the benefits. Now let's discuss about some of the requirements to work in hospitality industry. So let's start off with some certifications or qualifications required. Now most of the job roles in hospitality may not require you to have a degrees or diplomas. Most of the time you will get away with some short courses. So there are some popular courses that you can undertake depending upon the type of job role. So some of the popular ones are RSA, Responsible Service of Alcohol, RSG, Responsible Service of Gambling, Certification in Food Handling, and Barista Training. Now if you want to do some of these short courses, we'll leave a link in the description box below where you can go and check out some of these short courses yourself. The prices are pretty decent as well, so please go ahead and have a look, although probably after watching this video. The next requirement is some work experience. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are not lots of work experience requirements to work in this industry, but in certain job roles, you may need to still have some work experience, especially if it involves some planning, management, and so on. So for example, if you want to become a chef or a restaurant manager, then there will be some requirements for the work experience. The next important requirement will be communication skills. So especially if you're going to work in front of house job roles, you will need to have a decent communication skills. Again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're working in the back, in the kitchen areas and so on, you may not need to have an amazing communication skills. But if you are going to take orders from customers, need to take payments and stuff, you need to have a decent communication skills. And last but not the least, as an international student, you need to make sure that you abide by the work conditions that you have on your visa. That includes working 48 hours per fortnight, and you can obviously work unlimited hours during your official school holidays. So these are some of the requirements that you need to be mindful of when working in hospitality. The next thing we are going to discuss is different roles in the hospitality sector. So we can basically divide the hospitality job roles into two areas. One is front of house roles, and then other one is back of house roles. And some of you might be even wondering what these things even mean. So front of house roles basically involves dealing directly with customers. So the roles where you will be taking orders from customers, taking payments, dealing with their inquiries, and so on. Back of house roles usually don't involve a lot of interaction with customers. Most of the time it's all about interacting or communicating only within your team members. So now let's discuss some of these job roles. First, we'll will discuss about front of house roles. So the popular ones including waiting staff like waiters, waitresses, baristas, people who make coffees, bartenders, people who usually serve alcohol, host, receptionist, people who usually welcome people, customer service, and so on. Now let's look at some back of house roles. That includes chefs, cooks, kitchen hands, dishwashers, caterers, managers like restaurant managers, cafe managers, and so on. There are obviously many other job roles in hospitality industry, but we picked up some really popular ones among international students here in Australia. So there are different type of hospitality venues where you can actually find job in. That includes places like restaurants, cafes, bars and pubs, hotels, nightclubs, event venues, and catering companies. So these are some of the popular venues where you can actually find a job role in the hospitality industry. There are some other places also like in tourist attractions and so on. So you can definitely find some more job roles over there. But again, we are focusing more on some of the popular places where you can actually find job in. Now let's look at one of the most important part, which is how to actually find a job in hospitality industry. Now in many of the other previous videos, we have mentioned that online is the way to go when finding a job in Australia, but not in hospitality industry. One of the most popular way of finding a job in hospitality industry in Australia is actually door knocking. Door knocking is where you actually go from one restaurant to the other asking for manager. Usually you will have to bring your resume and talk about your availability and if they have any job roles. Now there is a way you can approach this restaurant manager and how to have a conversation with this restaurant manager as well. And being myself who have done something similar in the past, I can actually give you kind of a script if you want me to do that. So let me know in the chat if you would like me to create a separate video on how to actually approach the manager and what sort of things you can expect when having a conversation with that restaurant manager. So if you want me to make a separate video on that, please type below restaurant manager video in the comment section. In the past, if many people have asked for that sort of video, we have created those videos. You can look up on some of the videos we have done, including superannuation and so on. So that was one of the first ways of finding a job here in Australia in this industry. Now the next popular way of finding a job is through recruitment agencies. So recruitment agencies basically agencies that are specialized in hospitality job roles. There are many of these agencies that we have here in Australia. So I'll give you a list of few popular agencies that you can approach for finding a job in the industry. So some of the popular agencies include Peter Rowland Catering, Delaware North, Spotless, Pinnacle People, Hospo World, VIP People, JRM Hospitality, and Frontline Recruitment Group. These are some of the popular agencies for finding work in hospitality. Again, with these agencies, you can apply through online, or if they have an office, you can go to the office and speak to them about the job roles. Now, last but not the least, obviously, is online. There are some popular websites and some apps where you can find work in hospitality industry. So let's talk about some popular websites first. That includes websites like Gumtree, Facebook, Student Job Board, Seek, Indeed, Adzuna, and so on. And when it comes to apps, there are some specific apps also where you can find hospitality work in. So some of the popular ones include Barcat, Sidekicker, SubApp, QuickShift, Barista, Gumtree, and Facebook again. So these are some of the popular apps and websites for finding the jobs. Now, before we end the video, here are some quick tips and tricks for applying jobs in hospitality industry. One of the first one will be to have a good resume. So whether you're applying online or when you're going for door knocking, it's important that you have your resume with you. And your resume should highlight your experience, your relevant skills, and if you have got any certifications done as well. And if you are after a really good resume template, we have got you sorted as we have a couple of templates available on our website. So we got a 1-page resume template and we got a 2-page resume template as well. So choice is yours, whichever you want to use. You can download it for free from the link in the description. And both of them have some ideas as well, so it's a great starting point for anyone who's planning to write up their resume. The next thing will be if you want to find a job in the industry, it's a good idea to network actively. So if you're really serious of working in hospitality, my suggestion will be to connect with the right people and create your network with peer and support system from the people in the industry. One of the other important tip will be to consider doing some short courses. Some of the courses I mentioned earlier, I think they are great investment. I know it costs some money, but if you can get a job in the industry, they can pay off really really quickly as well. I did some of these short courses myself also. It actually helped me to get a job in the industry. And definitely one of the other suggestions will be to utilize these job agencies that we mentioned earlier. Many of the people just try to either apply online or they wait for the references, but recruitment agencies can be a great source of finding a job in this industry. So don't hesitate and contact these agencies. And one of the another tip would be to know your work rights. Unfortunately, there are some bad actors in the hospitality industry that try to exploit international students. So it's very important to understand what are your rights, what are the minimum pay rates, and you need to familiarize yourself with some of these things here in Australia. And I highly recommend you to check Fair Work Australia website in order to find out your minimum pay rates and your work rights as well. The next tip will be to explore some local opportunities. Rather than going out and finding the work in the city area, it might be worthwhile for you to find some jobs in your local area, especially if you're living in the suburban areas. And if you're going for a door knocking, my suggestion is always bring a smile along with you when you are giving your resume to these managers, and also make sure to dress up nicely as well, so when you're meeting these people you look professional enough. So those were some of the tips and tricks that you should definitely keep in mind when finding a job in this industry. Now if you are someone who's exploring different industries to find a job in Australia, then I highly recommend you to check this video where I talk in detail about retail jobs in Australia. We have got a very comprehensive guide in that video, but it's specifically focused on retail jobs. So if you are interested in that, please check that video and I'll see you there.